Whenever there's a supposedly racialized incident in the United States of America, we are always told by the media, by race hustlers, by people whose sole existence is to crap on the United States, that we need to picture this incident within the context of American history. We need to understand the pattern so that we can understand exactly how bad this incident is, and thus we can do the work, have the conversation, and move forward in our society and create the racial healing that these people are always promising, yet you can't help but notice that they make all their money off of racial division. However, when you actually look into these incidents, when you actually do a deep dive and look for patterns, what you end up finding is a pattern of lies, a pattern of hoaxes, a pattern of using the system, everybody freaking out, then exposing it later, and that story barely getting any coverage. And when you bring this up, when you put this forward to the media, what do they tell you? They say, don't notice that pattern, pretend that that doesn't exist. Honestly, you're really deflecting from the real victims of these hate instances, and honestly, you ought to be ashamed of yourself for not noticing, because these real victims, they're definitely out there somewhere, and you focusing on all these fake instances and the crazy overreaction to these fake instances is just distracting from these real victims that eventually we're going to put forward, just not yet. And remember, America has an evil white racist history. Well, we're going to go over a story today that the media doesn't want you to notice. We're going to go over a story today that, of course, is a local news story because it turned out not in their favor. If it turned out in their favor, it would have been a national news story, because you guys need to understand what the actual pattern is in this country. And that is a pattern of false victimization used by many to profit, get their name out there, get attention, and then it gets exposed, and all of a sudden the story gets buried. But before we get into this incident, we're going to be sponsored, so I'm going to toss it to the sponsor. Two-handed toss, haven't done that in a while. Then I'll bring it back over here and we'll discuss it on the other side. If your New Year's resolution, like nearly half of people in the United States of America, is to be a healthier person overall, then I have something for you. And of course, what I'm talking about is this amazing powder over at Keto with Justice. This powder can help elevate the level of ketones in your body, which helps with weight management and can help prolong a state of ketosis if you're on the keto diet. And luckily for you, you can get it for 51% off at ketowithjustice.com. 60-day money-back guarantee, 51% off. Meet those New Year's resolution goals finally. So today's story comes out of McClatchy High School in Sacramento, California. And apparently this high school and this whole school district has been victimized by overwhelming amounts of racial instances, and this is a huge pattern of racial abuse, and the latest instance had to do with graffiti that was put up all over the school, specifically around the water fountains that labeled the two different water fountains colored and white. And honestly, I could just say, based on this picture alone, they're doing racism not that well, because as you can see, this is the only drinkable water fountain, and that's labeled for the colored people, and this fountain is only for refilling the bottles. So maybe this is actually a joke about how white people carry water bottles around and black people do not. I don't know, maybe that's a new stereotype. Maybe it was invented right here on the internet.com, on the actual Justice Warrior channel, but it would lead us to believe, if we are among the woke left, that these people are trying to call back to the 1950s and reinstate segregation in the known slave state of California, specifically in Sacramento, an area not known for having any black students at all. Now, the level of stupidity of any of these individual stories is not actually the story. The reaction to these stories is what you should point to and notice and pay attention to, because that reaction is going to govern policy in these school districts going forward. And when that reaction is based on lies, based on hoaxes, the idea that it gets undone once that's revealed is just not the case. These people go forward when they hire racial and equity people into the school districts. They remain even if the reason they were hired in the first place didn't actually exist, and they actually enforce policy down the line going forward that racially discriminates even though, again, their basic reason for existing is based on a lie. So let's go into the original news coverage so you can get an idea of the temperature of the coverage that this story got when it was believed to be done by an evil white racist.
And another story we're following tonight, shock and anger at a Sacramento high school after racist graffiti is found on campus. Tonight, the school district vowing to hold whoever did it responsible.
KCRA 3's Melanie Wingo joins us live now from McClatchy High School tonight with reaction from students and the district. Melanie?
That racist graffiti was removed immediately once it was discovered by school staff, but the fact that it was up there in the first place is disturbing to the entire school community.
Now, so far, the way the local news is describing it, I don't actually have a problem with it. There was a graffiti incident, it might have been a hate incident, so it's perfectly fine for the school district officials to vow to hold the person behind this responsible. Now, it gets a little sketchy, it gets a little hardcore, it gets a little exaggerated as we go on through this story, but I do think there should be punishments for doing graffiti at the schools because your and I tax dollars end up paying to clean that up, and if it causes harm and a disruption on the campus, that becomes a problem for the educational experience. So let's get into this local news segment so you could see how we jump from about a 3 to an 11 really quickly.
A photo circulating widely on social media shows the racist graffiti that appeared above a water fountain at McClatchy High School.
It's like 1950s in 2022.
So immediately they bring up a local race hustler to come in and get all the attention from this story. I believe this guy is described as a community organizer later on, and I'm just gonna say he is at about a 5 right now in terms of the outrage, but the first thing out of his mouth is, wow, we're coming back to the 1950s. The long history of Jim Crow segregation in the deep south of Sacramento, California has been restored, and it's all because people are just not used to black people being in the city of Sacramento. They've never seen one in there before up until very recently, hence the long history of discrimination being reborn in its birth origin place, the deep south of Sacramento, California.
Two sides of the fountain, one with the word colored over it, the other with the word white over it.
Did that lady just give us a Jared Taylor white? I think she did. Let me replay that clip.
White over it. White.
Yes, 100%. She went with a white on one side. I think this lady covering this story, the blonde-haired, blue-eyed woman, might actually be the evil white racist behind it all.
It's very hateful, very insensitive, and very racist.
Community advocate Barry Axius telling KCRA3 there are also social media images being shared of teenagers drinking from the fountains.
These young people, whoever was involved, and they're on social media taking pictures, thinking that it's funny, they need to be held accountable.
So again, this guy's going scorched earth right off the bat. He's talking about how there are images of students who saw this and didn't melt down, even though we were just told that the whole entire community was outraged, shocked, and stunned by this. And they took pictures of them drinking out the fountain. So this guy wants the people who took the photos of them drinking out of the fountains arrested or charged or punished by the school in some way, shape, or form, because apparently they contributed to this culture of racism. Now, here's the thing. Would I necessarily drink out of a fountain labeled in this way? Probably not, because I'm a savvy person. But if I was in high school and I was thirsty and somebody did this graffiti on top, I would probably want to get myself a drink, and I don't think I should be punished for doing so just because somebody else took a picture of me doing so. And to the black kids who had a sense of humor about it because it's a ridiculous incident, I give credit to them for making a joke out of something, because even if this was a hate incident, you memeing the hate incident is a good way to respond to it, in my humble opinion. But this guy is very serious. He wants the people taking the photos arrested, prosecuted, and sent to jail because they are participating in a long history of racism. And it's like 1955 in the deep south that is the city of Sacramento, California.
It's just like, I just think it's really disrespectful.
McClatchy students describing their reaction to seeing images of the racist graffiti on their school campus.
Whoa. You think you're gonna slip that by me, local news? Listen, I'm not for segregation, I'm not for separation or anything like that, but can we get 2 separate cups for these girls? it's really weird for the news to film these high school girls eating out of the same cup of ice cream in a segment about racism. I can tell that somebody behind the camera was like, hey, let's get them ice cream. And then they were like, should we get them two? And he was like, no, we're not going to get them two. We're going to get them one and show them eating together because white girl, who might be Hispanic, excuse me, please, for misidentifying you as a white girl, and black girl eating together, this will show the racial unity, but it's not racial unity. It's racial unity on the terms of white people, because notice what is in that white cup. That is white ice cream, pure vanilla white ice cream, aka one of the symbols of ice cold evil white racism. So yeah, news agency, don't show me this. I am disturbed by this image. This is more disturbing than the person doing the graffiti over the water fountains. How dare you? Why is this here? You disgust me. I am disgusted. Also, and I know you guys might be thinking I'm focusing absolutely way too much on the ice cream eating portion of this story, but I need to say that this mask in particular is absolutely and utterly pointless. We know for a fact that people under the age of 18 are thankfully less affected by the virus, but more importantly, whatever benefits wearing a mask have tend to be undone when you guys are swapping spit by eating out of the same ice cream cup. The idea that you would wear a mask outside for safety from the virus, but then share the same ice cream cup in a weird attempt for the news to show unity among the races makes no sense at all. It's incredibly stupid, and it's honestly almost a perfect distillation of leftism on display. Virtue signal with the mask, and then do something that if you were sick would clearly spread the virus while lecturing everybody else.
I'm just speechless about it because, especially during Black History Month, since it's new, because it definitely hasn't been there since before that.
That was just like shocking. Like, it's crazy that people are still like thinking that's okay.
Oh, it's also done in the beginning of Black History Month, obviously a symbol from the evil white racists that they want to strike out against Black History Month. Need I remind you that this is also in Northern California? I know that might be the deep south to some people behind this segment, but in reality, it's quite cold in Northern California in February, so they're eating ice cream. So my conspiracy theory about the ice cream eating clearly being a staged portion of this is infinitely more valid. Also, that girl was a white girl, look at her last name, and notice when she's talking about the evil white racism, she's looking over to her black friend for approval, thus showing you that they're training the kids real young to be white guilted cowards.
Superintendent Jorge Aguilar said, I am both angry and heartsick that racist graffiti was discovered on the CK McClatchy campus today. We take this incident very seriously. Racism and racist language will not be tolerated in our schools. The statement going on to say, our district is committed to confronting racial prejudice. This offensive incident serves as another reminder that we need to have a reckoning on race at all levels in SCUSD and beyond.
So there you get a statement from the superintendent. He talked about how he's disgusted and horrified and ashamed of the evil white racism on display on his campus, how this won't be tolerated, indicating that this person who is behind this evil white racist person, will be expelled, they will be punished, and it just goes to show you that we as a society, as a school district, and as a nation need to work hard and do the work and put in the work and have the conversations to have a racial reckoning in the United States of America, because honestly, this is a part of a long pattern of racialized racist racism that we've seen in the United States of America. Racism.
Students and advocates interested in learning more about how the district will hold the people responsible for that racist graffiti accountable.
And I'm going to sit there and say, what are you guys going to do about it? When are we going to have stricter policies that protect black children in these schools?
So again, they throw it back to the race hustler, demanding that there are stricter policies to protect black children in these schools. And guess what? We are going to get some stricter policies to protect black children because they caught the perpetrator, and unsurprisingly, it was a black female.
We are tired of district excuses. We are tired of district letters. We are tired of, we are investigating. What we want is consequences.
So I love the fact that the local news segment where they talk about how the student who was behind this was actually a black female led off with the same race hustler getting all angry, giving a speech about how we're tired of the letters. We're tired of hearing that the investigation is ongoing or anything like that. We want consequences. So you can see he's really hyping up the anger, really hyping up the attitude, really trying to get in the face, and there's a bunch of white guilted cowards behind him. And of course, as I just said, the perpetrator behind this is a black female. And guess what? Do you think that he's going to have that same level of energy? Do you think he's going to bring that same level of intensity? Absolutely not. Everybody involved all of a sudden is going to downplay this incident, even though they were using this as an attack on the white students and to forward their racial equity agenda.
Last Friday, someone wrote the words white and colored over water fountains here at McClatchy High School, obviously a reference to the Jim Crow era. Tonight, we're learning the district is disciplining the student involved, but it stopped short of calling it racial hatred or a hate crime. Now, the district hired someone to oversee race and equity, which includes investigating racial incidents. Mark Harris tells me a black female student confessed to the vandalism, and the investigation shows her on camera. He tells me the student said she did it as a prank.
Now, the local news reporter says that somebody wrote white and colored over some drinking fountains and that this was obviously a reference to the Jim Crow era South. And while that might seem obvious to you out there in the audience, while you might come under that impression because it says white and colored and that's very tied in to what people believe Jim Crow was all about, the school district actually totally disagrees. Now that the student is a black student, they're going to go with, she coincidentally wrote this totally wasn't a race hoax against white people, and if you don't believe me, take a look at the person that they hired to deal with the evil white racism in the district and his explanation of this whole situation and how it's kind of not a big deal, but thanks for all the money that you paid to me because I'm a race hustler now put into a position of power with oversight over your students in the Sacramento school district, even though I'm obviously a race hustler.
Meanwhile, the district refers to the McClatchy incident as troubling vandalism.
I don't believe that those words that were on those water fountains were racist. I do not believe they were hate crime or hate speech. Part of it, quite honestly, is because the admitted perpetrator is an African-American young woman.
Yeah, so the race hustler that they hired that is now overseeing the discipline says, look, a black student admitted to it. We caught her on video. She definitely did do. But the thing is, it's not really a racial incident. I mean, I was hired because this was a racial incident when we thought it was a way to go after a white student. Turns out it's a black female, and obviously they rank better on the oppression chart. So right now, at this moment, not a racial incident. Not really something to be concerned about. And honestly, it's just a prank, bro. No big deal. Don't worry about it. It's just a prank.
I don't believe that those words that were on those water fountains were racist. I do not believe they were hate crime or hate speech. Part of it, quite honestly, is because the admitted perpetrator is an African-American young woman.
Yeah, there he is, saying it right there. I don't agree that it's a racially perpetrated crime. I don't agree that it's racist. I mean, the person wrote white and colored. Remember how we talked about how it was in the beginning of Black History Month? But, you know, the perpetrator is an African-American female. Therefore, there's no possible way that she could have done this in any way, shape, or form, I don't know, to create a victim narrative and smear the white students on the campus as racist. That's not what I was hired to look into, so I'm just going to say I don't believe that it's possible. Now they're going to go back to the other race hustler that in the beginning of the segment was demanding consequences, and he's going to throw out some conspiracy theory nonsense, because what would this story be without more lies and more false claims of racial victimization?
I disagree at it being a hate crime because at the end of the day, we understand when you have colored on one water faucet and white on another kind of water faucet, what that means. Whether it's 1950 or 2022.
So this guy's like, I don't agree that it's not a hate crime because whenever you have like in 1950 or in 2022 white and colored, therefore it's definitely a hate crime. Everybody knows what that means. Please don't point out how ridiculous and angry I was earlier on before I had all the information, and don't notice the quivering in my voice and the backpedaling in my tone. And the fact that I gathered all these people here just to find out that it was a black student that was behind this all.
However, some activists question the evidence, citing mistrust of the district's handling of racism in the past. And I did ask if there had been any movement with the Abraham Lincoln case, and I've heard so far there's been no progress yet.
Now, by the way, that is in fact true. There are people within the community, mostly within the race hustler portion of the community, that are questioning the evidence. They say video evidence of this person doing the graffiti and a confession from her, not good enough. And isn't it weird that in a case where you caught it on video and you were able to identify the student and get a confession within 2 weeks, you were able to find the perpetrator, but in another case, where no such video evidence exists, the investigation is still ongoing. Obviously, it's evil white racism, and the fact that you went and caught a black student who was on video in a case where she confessed so quickly based on the video, and you didn't catch this other graffiti at another school that there is no video and there is no evidence, so the investigation is logically taking longer, is actually more proof of the evil white racism. And if you think I'm joking, the local NAACP chapter actually sent a letter over complaining about the fact that they were able to catch the black criminal.
The investigation process for the other incidents is being called into question by the NAACP. They wrote this statement that reads in part, quote, "The investigation process is not fair, as evident by the swift investigation and closure of the C.K. McClatchy incident where the perpetrators are allegedly black. Meanwhile, the perpetrators of the hate crimes at West Campus are still at large, and it seems the SCUSD is protecting them from prosecution."
So we get criticized, the district gets criticized for taking too long in that instance. And here's a situation where the whole matter was resolved within 2 weeks and the district gets criticized for that.
Now look, that guy is the same race hustler who said that this was no longer a hate incident and it couldn't possibly be racially motivated because the student was a black woman, but credit where credit is due. He's 100% right on how absurd some of the criticism is being leveled at the district about how they took way faster in this case where they had video evidence and that makes them racist versus this other case where they don't have that evidence and that also makes them racist. The NAACP should be ashamed claiming that it's the alleged perpetrator. This person admitted to doing it and they're on video caught doing it, but they still have to add that ambiguity in there. And they should be shamed for them trying to push out these hoaxes even further in order to better set up themselves for financial gain. They already got their racial equity officer in the school. He's already giving the girl who did it a slap on the wrist, making excuses for her in public, things that he would not have done if it would have been a white student involved in this. So you should be satisfied with it that this story is going to get buried. But of course, the NAACP, all the race hustlers, have to invent conspiracies and all this other nonsense to cover up for the fact that they ran wild with this hoax and try to forward their agenda, and it was all based on a lie. These stories are always happening across the country. When victimization becomes currency, you shouldn't be surprised that people start to traffic in it. So the idea that hoax hate incidents are just a one-off or not that big of a deal is absurd. They happen way more often, and as we push forward this hyper emphasis on isms and phobias, we should expect to see more of them. And when they fall apart, you have to notice, you have to call it out, you have to keep it on record, because if you don't, it's just going to get memory hold. But hey, those are just my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on all my social media, support me via the support links in the description box of this video. This has been me talking about a hoax hate incident. Till next time.